Hello, I just want to talk a little bit about email security, and I've done blog posts on this in the past, but things have moved on. And if you've not seen it, you can check your domain's email security at emailsecurity-check.service.ncsc.gov.uk/check, or just Google email security check, and this will be the first hit in the UK. And then you can pop in your domain in there, whatever it might be, or as it suggests, a domain that you work with. So maybe you've got a company that you work with, or companies, and you want to just check that their email is suitably secure and you don't need to take any special actions to handle their email. So what you're looking for is a result like that. So you want 5 green ticks. The third green tick you only get when you send them an email, and it gives you instructions below on the fact that you have to send them an email and then click on view results. The other 4 you should get straight away if they're configured correctly. SPF and DKIM records I've talked about previously on another blog post, and they essentially are mechanisms by which you are proving that the email is coming from you and you're not being spoofed. DMARC is a check that checks that both of these are in place before that email is effectively trusted. TLS is transport layer security, so that's the encryption that you get on most emails. And MTA-STS is a relatively new thing in the last few years, and you can look this one up, and that's Mail Transfer Agent Strict Transport Security. And there's a good article here on the gov.uk about what it does, but just to highlight what it does here, it makes it harder for attackers to get emails sent to an alternative location. It effectively forces end-to-end encryption, and therefore makes things like man-in-the-middle attacks on email much more difficult, to the point of being not impossible, but very difficult. And it stops the downgrade of email security that could potentially occur. So if this is the objective, how do we get there? So as I said, I've talked about most of these before, but the MTA-STS, if we're talking Google Workspace, it's relatively easy. So you go into Gmail. This is a test Google Workspace setup, not a production one. You go into Gmail, and then down at the bottom you've got compliance. And what you do is scroll right down, and right at the bottom you've got MTA-STS, and you click on that, and then it will tell you what the recommended settings are. So these are not configured. So the one I'm using at the moment is this one called elmschool.org, and it tells you what you need to put in place. Now these 2 are DNS records. This needs to be a real email address, because this is going to get reports, and this will get reports on, say, if email delivery was rejected because the conditions of MTA-STS were not met. So you can track issues, and it suggests putting it in testing to start with, but you want to work towards that being enforce, not testing. Testing won't actually stop anything happening. Enforce will. So top and the bottom ones are DNS records, and the DNS records that you need, I've got documented for my own purposes. You want this _MTA-STS. That is a text record that points to that string there. The second one down here, that's another text record that you need to put in your DNS, and that is _smtp._TLS, then your domain. So you'd put these 2 in as text records, and the values of those text records would be here and here. The other thing that you need to do is publish a policy. So this has to be published as a text file, and that text file has to be hosted, and it has to be hosted HTTPS. It's got to have a proper SSL security on a subdomain which is MTA-STS dot whatever your domain is. In this case it would be .elmschool.org, and that needs to be publicly available. And there's a couple of ways to do that. If you've got your own hosting, so say a public website, then you can just spin up a subdomain and you can do it there. If you haven't got that and you don't have access to sort of web hosting, then if you use something like Cloudflare for your DNS, which is pretty good, there is a way that you can do it using that, because what you need is MTA-STS, whatever your domain is, /.well-known, well-known, /MTA-STS.text. So I do this as an example. I'll just pick a domain I know has this, so I'm just going to sub that in for an actual real domain. So I spelled that right, yeah. And there you go, you've got the record. So that's what you need to have. And there is a lot of good documentation out there of how you can achieve this with a Cloudflare worker. So if you've got your DNS hosted on Cloudflare, you can create a worker. You can pop in some code, you can Google this. I'll put it into a Google document, so I've got ready access to it, although I've kept the original reference. Google has good documentation on how to go about setting up this particular security protocol, so I've got a link to the Google documentation there. And then it talks about, once you set up the worker, how you have to set up a custom domain and you have to add a root. To do this takes seconds. It really doesn't take much doing. All you have to do is edit this code and put your domain in there, and what goes in there is not what's on there. You would go here and copy that text and pop it into where I've highlighted there. So you delete the text there, paste that in, and then that's going to publish your MTA-STS policy on the web. And once you've done that, you give DNS a little while to think about it, and I do mean a little while, like half an hour at least, and then you reload this page, and then MTA-STS for your domain will move from being not configured to being a nice green valid, and then when you run these sorts of checks you'll get a green tick at MTA-STS. So it's not difficult to do. I think there's a growing awareness that this is important, along with all of the others which are pretty much essential. So if you don't have your 5 green ticks, then I'd encourage you to get your 5 green ticks and give your users a little bit more peace of mind when handling email. There is no foolproof system, so vigilance as always, but this can go a long way to making issues far less common.